On this week's NESN Patriots podcast, we will recap the Patriots' 30-14 win over the New York Jets and preview their toughest game to date against the undefeated Buffalo Bills. Hello and welcome to this week's NESN Patriots podcast. I'm Doug Kai, joined as always by Zach Cox. Zach, how are you doing?
Doing well, Doug. Excited for some Buffalo wings this weekend. It's always a nice perk of this particular date on the Patriots schedule.
Yeah, for sure. I think in past years we've basically had buffalo wings for every single meal in the 3 days that we're there.
It's not even an exaggeration.
Probably going to try to avoid that this year. Maybe mix in some celery or something like that. But we will get to that game against the Bills in a minute. Let's first touch on the news of the day, which is that the Patriots signed a third quarterback in Cody Kessler. They also signed a practice squad tight end in Jason Vanderlaan. We've come a long way from discussing Antonio Brown nonstop when we're now discussing Cody Kessler and Jason Vanderlaan. But this is kind of the way I like it. The big exciting stuff like Antonio Brown is fun and all until it's not. But I really live for these Cody Kessler and Jason Vanderlaan signings personally.
It's the best. I just spent 35, 40 minutes writing a story on Jason Vanderlaan, watching some of his college tape from Division II Ferris State, where he was the most productive rushing quarterback in the history of college football.
Yeah.
This is the stuff that
not
I look
Michael
for.
Vick, not Tommy Frazier. Not Eric Crouch.
Yeah, that's a trivia question that I'm gonna be able to ask people now and know the answer to.
Kessler is obviously the more notable one since he signed to the 53-man roster, and quarterbacks are always clearly a big deal. It was a bit of a strange signing, but the Patriots had an open roster spot. I don't know what else they really would have done with it because Ben Watson is coming off of his suspension next week. So if they had signed a player at a different position, that guy probably would have been gone next week anyway. There was really no point in them signing a guy off their practice squad for one game and then releasing him just to get Ben Watson back on the roster. So I don't really know how long Cody Kessler will last on the roster because he very well could be the guy who is cut for Ben Watson next week. But I don't know. To me, this just feels like they're giving him kind of a one-week tryout. If he impresses, maybe they'll keep him beyond the Watson reactivation. And if he doesn't impress, then maybe he's gone next week.
Yeah, the timing seemed a little... When you just look at it on the surface, you see,
right.
Oh, Jarrett Stidham just played his first NFL game and immediately threw a pick six and was benched, and now the Patriots are coming in and bringing in another quarterback. I don't really think that this has much, if at all, to do with Jarrett Stidham. I think it just is easier for a team to have three quarterbacks, either on its active roster or two on its active roster and one on its practice squad. I think a practice squad signing would have been more expected, I guess, in this situation. But
more predictable, yeah.
Yeah, more predictable, or maybe they just were kind of intrigued by Cody Kessler and decided to kind of bring him in and take a shot on him.
And who's not intrigued by Cody Kessler?
Cody Kessler of Browns and Jaguars fame.
And Eagles.
I think he was the quarterback in the in Tom Brady's first game back from suspension back in 2016, where the Patriots went to Cleveland and just absolutely trounced the Browns. I think that's the only time I remember watching a full Cody Kessler game.
Cody Kessler's not terrible.
He's not terrible.
I'm going to say that about him.
He's better than any kind of random, inexperienced guy that they could have gotten onto the practice squad at this point, like a Taylor Heineke or Garrett Gilbert in recent years, that kind of level.
He was 0-8 in his rookie year in Cleveland, which not ideal. But he had a 6 touchdown to 2 interception ratio. Not great to throw 6 touchdowns in 8 games, but at least that was a positive ratio there. And he went 2-2 with the Jaguars last year, whereas I believe Blake Bortles went 3-9 as their starter. So
something along those lines.
Cody Kessler, better than Blake Bortles. That might be what he's got going for him, or at least he was kind of last year with the Jaguars.
He's a normal level backup quarterback. I would say he's not a top tier backup quarterback.
Average to below average level.
He's fine as a backup quarterback. It'll be interesting to see what the Patriots do with him. Again, as you mentioned, he could be gone in a couple days, or this could be a situation where they continue to carry 3 sort of throughout the rest of the season, depending on what they see from him.
Yeah, definitely. And Yeah, like I mentioned, I mean, Bill Belichick said this morning that it had more to do with roster management than managing Tom Brady's workload. Brady was limited in practice last week with a calf injury, so I mean they probably could have used Cody Kessler last week if Brady, depending on how limited Brady was. But there was talk at the beginning of the season after the Patriots released Brian Hoyer that the Patriots would be interested in bringing back Brian Hoyer at some point. So maybe that at some point would have been now for them because they did suddenly have this open roster spot by placing James Devlin on the injured reserve list. So I don't know. Yeah, I think that this would have been the time to do it. And like I said, if they had signed another player this week, the guy would have been inactive anyway because it's not like this team's dealing with injuries or major injuries or a ton of injuries right now. They're probably going to have some healthy scratches on their inactive list this week against the Buffalo Bills. So, I mean, why not make that inactive guy a quarterback?
And teams are required to have 53 players
Right.
on their roster every week, so they couldn't have just said, we're not even going to bring anybody in, we're just going to wait for Ben Watson to come back. They were required to make some sort of roster move to fill up the full 53.
Yeah, definitely. And now moving on to the tight end, Jason Vanderlaan. He, like you said, very mobile quarterback during his days at Ferris State. He's been moved to tight end in the NFL. He's been on the practice squad for most of his NFL career. I think he's had a cup of tea on an active roster.
4 games for the Colts a couple of years back, I think, is all he's seen in the regular season.
And, I mean, tight end is not a strong position for the Patriots right now. They've got Matt LaCosse and Ryan Izzo. Both, I mean, they haven't been playing a tight end on the field in 100% of snaps this season, which is kind of a departure for them. Plus, they've got Ben Watson coming back. I think they wanted a tight end there on the practice squad. They've been working out some guys. But our buddy Matt Doloff from the Sports Hub also brought up a good point that maybe they're going to be using Vanderlaan this week to imitate Josh Allen. They're both about 6'5", 240. They both run well. Vanderlaan clearly not the same type of passer that Josh Allen is. Otherwise, he would be playing quarterback as a starter in the NFL. But just the fact that he can throw the ball, he can throw the ball some distance, and he's got that rushing ability. I like the thought. I think that might be what they're using him for. I don't think that he'll be the permanent scout team quarterback this week, but I think there are definitely ways that they can use him against their defense to imitate what Josh Allen does.
Yeah, it would be smart. I mean, the Patriots have kind of done similar things in the past where they've used players who aren't quarterbacks to kind of just jump in there and sort of simulate a guy like a Deshaun Watson or Cam Newton, and Josh Allen is similar to that, where Tom Brady, Cody Kessler, and Jarrett Stidham just can't do a lot of the things that Josh Allen is able to do, especially as a runner. So yeah, why not? I mean, you have a need for some tight end depth anyway. Might as well bring in the guy who is a former rushing college quarterback and can do a lot of the has a lot of similar traits to Josh Allen from that standpoint. It makes sense. It's kind of the Patriots just doing some next level thinking that they're known for.
The Patriots, as I mentioned, did beat the Jets 30-14 in Week 2. We won't get too far deep into that game since it was a while ago at this point. We're kind of all moved on to the Buffalo Bills now. But, I mean, another strong performance from the offense, an even stronger performance from the defense. I think that perhaps the biggest thing that came out of that game is the fact that Julian Edelman left the game at the end of the first half with a chest injury. He was at practice today, but likely going to be questionable for this Week 4 game against the Buffalo Bills.
Probably, yeah. It was a good sign, though, that he was back out on the practice field already. When it initially happened, he kind of grabbed his ribs/chest area, and of course the first thing you think of there is did he break a rib? Did he have some sort of internal damage in there? I think the latest report I've seen was that it was a chest contusion. Which is
it's a fancy word for a bruise.
A fancy word for a bruise, which obviously probably doesn't feel too great,
No.
which is why he wasn't able to come back into that game. But it does sound like he avoided any sort of long-term injury. Whether he plays this week, we probably won't get a good sense of that until we might not even know until Saturday. But the fact that he is already back out at practice just a couple days after that game is definitely a good sign for the Patriots.
For sure. The Patriots did struggle to run the ball against the Jets. Sonny Michel had 9 carries for 11 yards with a touchdown. Rex Burkhead had more success 11 carries, 47 yards, and a touchdown. And since that game, James Devlin was placed on injured reserve with a neck injury. The Patriots did not have James Devlin in this game. I mean, with Michel struggling, with James Devlin now on injured reserve, like we mentioned before, Ryan Izzo and Matt LaCosse are not every down players for the Patriots. And now with Julian Edelman banged up, this all just basically means to me that the Patriots are going to be passing the ball a lot in the next coming weeks at least. Just in probably going 3 or 4 wide at wide receiver. We'll see what happens when Ben Watson comes back. But this does put a lot of pressure on Tom Brady. I wrote about that this morning, that if the Patriots are not only going to be passing the ball a lot, but they're also going to have a guy like Jacoby Myers, potentially as their number 3 receiver. It's kind of a tough position, but I think that running game is a bit of a concern right now.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine Sony Michel sort of instantly finding his stride now, since Devlin is not going to be in there. They're tied together more than almost any 2 players on this Patriots roster. I don't remember exactly what the number was last year, but Devlin was on the field for 2/3 of Sony Michel's snaps through the first 2 weeks this season, and Sony Michel, since he still has not proven himself to be able to kind of contribute in the passing game, he's really been their power running option. He has had success without James Devlin on the field, but those two are really kind of have almost worked as a unit. At least they did, especially late last season during that kind of morph to a power running offense. Josh McDaniels had some interesting quotes about this early this week, where he said, we are not going to try to replicate what we did last season. We can't try to replicate what we did last season, because if you look at the Patriots offense now, so many of the key kind of cogs from that rushing attack are gone. You've got James Devlin gone. You have David Andrews on injured reserve. Trent Brown is in Oakland. Rob Gronkowski's retired. Dwayne Allen, I don't even know where Dwayne Allen is right now. I don't even think he's on a roster.
He's on the street, yeah.
And then Trent Brown's replacement, Isaiah Wynn, is also on IR. So you have a lot of kind of the primary drivers of that success last season are no longer there. So it's not totally surprising that the Patriots are struggling to run the ball in those types of situations. And I'm interested to see just how the offense changes moving forward, because Jakob Johnson is, in theory, replacing James Devlin, but he didn't even play at all on offense in this last game until those final victory formation plays. He's obviously improved a lot from where he was at the beginning of the spring, but if this is a guy that Bill Belichick admitted was the worst player on the roster a couple months ago, so I think expecting much of anything from him is a little bit unrealistic, especially expecting him to be anywhere near as productive as James Devlin was. So do they just completely eliminate the fullback from their offense? And if they do, what does that mean for Michel? I
think it means less. I think it means less work for Michel.
I think certainly. It does as well. I mean, I don't think that Sony Michel needs to necessarily. I don't think he can only succeed if he has the fullback there. But that's really been the way that the Patriots have used him. So they're either going to have to kind of expand his skill set a little bit, or expand his usage, or just sort of dial him back and make it kind of even more James White and Rex Burkhead heavy.
I think our colleague Matt Chatham has brought up this point before, but I think that Michel would work pretty well in the stretch running game, but that sometimes requires him to have 2 tight ends on the field at the same time. So maybe once Watson comes back, then they start to do that a little bit more by having, Ben Watson, Ryan Izzo, or Ben Watson and Matt LaCosse on the field at the same time. And then just kind of readjust how they're using Sony Michel. He's got decent speed, so using those stretch running plays, I think that he would be a decent fit for it. I think he's been a decent fit for it in the past, but they just haven't really had the personnel in place to do that, because Matt LaCosse has also missed basically 2 games so far this season with an ankle injury that he's dealing with. So they really haven't even had the option of having 2 tight ends on the field at the same time.
And the one game that they did have 2 tight ends was by far Sony Michel's most productive game this season down in Miami.
In week 2, definitely. And that's the game that James Devlin got hurt, but he didn't really leave the game when he got hurt
briefly
in that game.
But he was on the field for most of the
time.
Right,
he finished the game at least. And I mean, with the one thing the Patriots are really succeeding with right now when Michel is on the field is play action passing. Their biggest 3 plays against the Jets all came on play action to Sony Michel. That was a 41-yard catch by Ryan Izzo, a 25-yard touchdown catch by Philip Dorsett, and a 22-yard catch by Josh Gordon. All 3 of those plays, the Patriots used play action with Sony Michel, and then that really opened up the field for Tom Brady to hit those receivers.
Yeah, the Dorsett one was probably the most obvious too of all.
For sure.
When you watch the replay, it was Jamal Adams and both of the Jets linebackers are literally in the backfield when Tom Brady fakes that handoff to Sony Michel.
It was also extremely effective on the 41-yarder by Ryan Izzo because he stayed in to block initially, and then he just kind of leaked out into it wasn't really the flat, it was into basically the open part of the field.
Yeah, it was similar to the play that we saw Rob Gronkowski have late in that first Chiefs game last season where he kind of stood in and blocked for a moment and then leaked out and he was wide open.
So I think that is a way. I mean, I'm writing about this for tomorrow at this point, but there's some trade-off there. I think the Patriots could certainly get less predictable when Sony Michel is on the field. He's only been on the field for 20 passing plays versus 54 running plays. So basically the opposing defense knows that Sony Michel is going to be running the ball when he's on the field until he doesn't. And on those 20 passing plays, the Patriots are averaging over 12 yards per pass. When Michel's not on the field, they're averaging 8 yards per pass. So they've been extremely effective passing the ball when Sony Michel's on the field. But if you start using Sony Michel more in the passing game, they'll probably be slightly more effective in the running game, but maybe slightly less effective in the passing game because then defenses are going to start to adjust for those trends. I mean, if the Patriots get a little bit more towards 60-40 or 50-50 with Sony Michel on the field running or passing, then it starts to mix everything in together. I think that if the Patriots are desperate to get their running game going, then they should involve Michel more in the passing game. That being said, they're winning right now and winning big with the way things are currently constructed. So I'm not sure if they're necessarily in a rush to get Michel in the passing game when Rex Burkhead and James White are better players of that style anyway.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of jostle this whole thing around moving forward because it's almost like what James White and Rex Burkhead do well and what Sony Michel does well are very different things at this point. So it's almost hard to imagine all 3 of them being able to have success at the same time. If all 3 of them have success at the same time, this Patriots offense is going to be absolutely unstoppable. Yep. But they've been able to succeed so far by having kind of White and Burkhead capitalize where Sony Michel is unable to, and vice versa. So it'll definitely be interesting. It's going to be very that's going to be kind of one of the main things to watch this weekend, especially against a defense that is actually good for really the first time this season against the Patriots.
And one thing that I think has been lost in the shuffle a little bit this season as far as Sony Michel goes and his involvement in the passing game is that no, he does not have a reception, and he only had 7 receptions all of last season, but he also has more pass blocking snaps than Rex Burkhead and James White combined. He's got 10 pass blocking snaps. Burkhead has 6 and James White has 2, and Michel has not allowed a pressure yet as a pass blocker. So while he's not catching the ball, he is being used in play action in those situations when he is on the field as a pass blocker, and he's been doing a good job at it.
Yeah,
so,
he's had a couple nice blitz pickups this year.
I know that that's not a sexy thing to talk about. You'd much rather a guy, catching 80 passes out of the backfield. But if he can be used in the passing game as an effective blocker, then there certainly is some value in that. That being said, I personally don't think Sony Michel has been very good as a running back this year. We're really spinning this in the most positive way possible. But there hasn't been a lot of room for him to run. At the same time, he hasn't been making anyone miss. And last week, for example, there was 2 runs where Rex Burkhead basically faced a similar situation as Sony Michel, where there was a guy in his face basically as soon as he was getting to the line of scrimmage. And in one situation, he powered through the guy for a 5 or 6 yard run. In another situation, he used a spin move to gain a 5 or 6 yard run. And Michel doesn't even seem to be trying to do that kind of stuff. In some of the carries that were similar to those runs that Burkhead had, when there was a guy, in his hole, he just kind of was tackled.
Yeah.
Like there wasn't much there for him to do, and he didn't really do anything with it.
Yeah, this has been kind of a classic Twitter debate this
Right.
week where people are very much on one side or the other. They're either saying Sony Michel sucks,
Right.
or no, Sony Michel's great, it's his blocking that sucks. The real reality is in the middle there. 'Cause
Yeah.
the Patriots' run blocking has not been very good, especially this past week. But, as you mentioned, guys like Burkhead are kind of making the most of the opportunities that they get. And if you are a number one running back in the NFL, a first-round draft pick who really comes in with pretty high expectations, you're supposed to be able to get more than what the offensive line gives you.
Right.
I mean, if Sony Michel is only there to get whatever, if he's only as good as the offensive line and the fullback and the tight end in front of him are, then he's not a very good player if that's the case. I do think Sony Michel is a good player, and I think he will improve at some point during this season. But yeah, he definitely needs to, even if it's one or two of those a game, because he's not gonna be Le'Veon Bell, and he's not going to be a guy who kind of just makes everything happen by himself regardless of what's up there. But a guy of his stature and of his pedigree, he should be making more plays than he is.
Yeah, I mean, it is it is kind of funny when people say, like, oh, yeah, well, there's no hole for him to run through. A lot of the time last year, Sony Michel basically took what the blocking gave him, and
the blocking was very good.
And like you said, I mean, if that's what a running back can do, I think you can essentially find a replacement level running back to run through holes. But I mean, I think that he still has the potential to get better and do better. We'll just kind of have to see how the season goes along. And he did have a decent Week 2 game before he fumbled. So we'll basically just have to see what happens there for the rest of the season. Let's talk about this Bills game because, as I said to lead off the show, this is definitely the biggest test for the Patriots so far. This is 2 3-0 undefeated teams going against each other. There was no possible way the Patriots were going to lose their last 2 games against the Dolphins and the Jets. And while I do still think the Patriots are going to beat the Bills, and I think they're still favored by about 7 points.
It's right around there, yeah.
This is a game they can lose. I don't think it's a game they can easily lose, but it is a game that they could potentially lose. Josh Allen has been a lot better at quarterback this season than he was last year. By Pro Football Focus's accuracy rate metric, he's actually been one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the NFL this year, which is not what anyone would have expected when he was coming out of Wyoming. The Bills have some speedy receivers who can stretch the field. They've got Cole Beasley, who can be that slot option. They don't have the greatest offensive line, but their defense also is very stout. Not quite as stout as the Patriots' defense, but still stout. And since this game is on the road, I mean, if this game was at home, if this game was at Gillette, then the Patriots would probably win outright and there would be no issue here. But since the game's in Buffalo, that's why there's the potential that the Patriots could lose this game.
Yeah, this is easily the most kind of evenly matched game that the Patriots have played this season. This Bills team is good. They're very good. They don't have a kind of glaring weakness that you can find. They're far and away the second best team in the AFC right now. I can say with pretty confidently after seeing what we saw from Miami and the Jets.
AFC East.
AFC East, yes. Is that what did I say? AFC?
I think so, yeah.
All right, sorry about that. Sorry, Buffalo, you're not there yet. But no,
sorry, Chiefs, move over. We got the Bills in town.
But their defense is very good. It's a unit that has a lot of the names that we've seen there over the last couple years. They don't really have a lot of big names in there. I don't know if you would consider like Tre'Davious White and Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde big names. They're guys that most football fans know, but and then Jerry Hughes and Lorenzo Alexander up front, but they don't have a lot of stars on that defense. But they've been very productive. I mean, they rank, I believe they're fifth
Fifth
right
allowed
now.
and yards allowed?
Fifth in points allowed and yards allowed. Sixth in DVOA. They were second in DVOA last season. And Tre'Davious White's been playing very well. He had two interceptions last game. So this is going to be the Bills' defense against the Patriots' offense is going to be a very kind of interesting and prominent matchup here this weekend. But I think I'm most interested to watch Josh Allen. I spent some time watching the Bills' last game yesterday. It was a win over the Cincinnati Bengals, where the Bills jumped out to a 14-0 lead pretty early, let the Bengals back in the game, and then ended up winning on a late touchdown by Frank Gore. And I liked what I saw from Josh Allen. He looks a lot more comfortable than he did last season. The Bills are really making it easier on him, I think, this year, because his accuracy was terrible last year, but he was also throwing the ball deep very frequently because he does have that rocket arm and everything, and it just wasn't really the recipe for success for them. They brought in Cole Beasley. They brought in John Brown. They've been sort of shrinking the offense down a little bit, I guess you could say. He's been doing a lot of quick throws, a lot of shorter throws, still running very well. I have been really impressed with his kind of elusiveness, because some quarterbacks can run and some quarterbacks can kind of move around in the pocket to create time. He can do both. The only kind of big flaw with him right now is that he still panics sometimes. There were two really glaring mistakes that he made against Cincinnati, where he was just under heavy pressure and kind of scrambling out of the pocket, and then just you can see it in his head. He's just like, all right, I'm just going to throw this ball now. And one of them was a intentional grounding on third down, and one of them was an interception, which kind of sparked Cincinnati's comeback in the second half. So that's what he's really going to have to limit against a team like the Patriots, because that's what the Patriots do. The Patriots find those kind of shortcomings and just expose them, because I'm sure they're going to have all sorts of creative pass rush schemes and stunts and everything this weekend. They haven't faced a running quarterback yet this season. All the quarterbacks they've faced have been pretty statuesque, and they have had some issues against quarterbacks like this in the past. And Deshaun Watson and Cam Newton. You
can't get quite as creative, at pass or rushing the passer when guys are that mobile.
It seems like they've been able to just the last couple games just
some of those
sort of pin their ears back and fly at him.
Some of those stunts that Jamie Collins is running up front might not work as much when a guy can move, and you do have to kind of conceal them on the edge, which doesn't allow you to get as many players going after the quarterback as well. But we are hyping up Josh Allen quite a bit, but this is still a guy who's got 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions in 3 games so far this season. So the production, as far as his stats go, still isn't quite there. He's averaging 250 yards a game, but I mean the 3 interceptions is certainly concerning, especially going up against a team like the Patriots, who have done a pretty good job so far this season of turning the ball over. Yeah,
he's significantly improved, but the kind of baseline from last season was pretty low, because he was one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL last season, I would say, as a rookie. So a lot of improvement, but still a pretty long way to go, and it's difficult to project him to kind of continue the success against the Patriots defense that, one, has so many veteran smart players, and 2, has just played so well this season.
John Brown, I should say, is the Bills' top wide receiver this season. He's got 18 catches for 246 yards and a touchdown. I would say that we'll probably expect to see Stephon Gilmore taking on John Brown. How tall is John Brown?
He's 5'11".
5'11", 178. I was expecting him to be smaller,
guy,
but so yeah, I mean, we very well could see Stephon Gilmore going up against John Brown. Cole Beasley has been their number 2 wide receiver so far this season by a large margin. 17 catches for 171 yards with no touchdowns.
It's basically been the 2 of them.
I would say that we'll probably see John Jones on Cole Beasley. And I mean, Cole Beasley is Cole Beasley. He's having a good season, but he's not exactly a standout special slot receiver. He's basically kind of like your average slot receiver as far as the NFL goes.
Yeah.
So I don't see that as being a major mismatch for the Patriots in that regard. And beyond that, they've got Dawson Knox at tight end, who's a rookie. Zay Jones, Isaiah McKenzie. They've still got Robert Foster at wide receiver. I don't think he has a catch so far this season. But
I think he's played only on special teams, maybe. Yeah. I haven't seen him out there at all.
But as far as their weapons go, I think the Patriots match up pretty well. And then in the running game, it's probably going to be Frank Gore. I believe that Devin Singletary still isn't practicing. They're rookie. And I mean, Frank Gore has been in the NFL for
100 years
at this point. Yeah, I mean, that guy was I'm pretty sure he was playing in the NFL when I was. I guess he was probably in college. Yeah.
When was his rookie year?
2005.
Yeah, that was my freshman year of high school.
Yeah, he was playing at the University of Miami when I was in high school. I'll say that much. But yeah, I mean, he's been around in the league forever. But Patriots' run defense has been quite stout this season, and Frank Gore isn't exactly the type of guy who's going to keep you awake at night based on his rushing ability. I can't believe that he did not have a touchdown last year.
Really? How many carries did he have? Like 150?
156 for 722 yards. No rushing touchdowns. He did have one receiving touchdown.
Huh.
Just looking at it, he's the third all-time leading rusher?
Fourth, I believe.
Fourth. He's only had one double-digit touchdown year.
Huh. He's just looking at Frank Gore's stats is just insane. Was it 213 games? He's missed 2 games over the last 2 games over the last 8 seasons.
Yeah.
He's a tank. I mean, I can't remember who said it. I was listening, it was either on a podcast or on the radio the other day, but what he's doing right now at age 36 is more impressive than what Tom Brady is doing right now at the
probably.
age 42. And I kind of agree with that. The fact that he's just getting smashed up for 20, 30 carries a game for the last decade and a half is crazy. I can't believe he's still doing what he's doing.
Maybe I wouldn't say that, but yeah, it is impressive. There's been 36-year-old running backs before. There's never been a 42-year-old.
True, but you don't see 36-year-old running backs have the kind of volume that Frank Gore does.
Right now, it's what Darren Sproles is still in the NFL. Oh, and Adrian Peterson is a couple years younger as well. But no, I mean, yeah, the amount of and somehow he emerges every year as his team's top running back. I think for the past 6 years, seemingly, it's been this young guy is supposed to emerge, and then Frank Gore still winds up with somewhere between 700 and 1,000 yards coming into the season, expecting to be a team's number 2 running back. And it looks like that's going to happen again this year with Devin Singletary injured right now. Frank Gore's gone basically 3 games now as their top running back, and this will probably be the 4th for him. So I would certainly still predict a Patriots win in this game, but I do think it'll be closer than the last 2 games they played against the Jets and the Dolphins.
I would agree with that. Even last year, the 2 Patriots-Bills games were relatively close, and one of those was, I think they had Derek Anderson at quarterback. Was it Derek Anderson or Nathan Peterman? They had some terrible quarterback in the game they played up in Buffalo last season. The Patriots only scored, I think it was 23 and 25 points in those 2 games. So it's been a little while since we've seen an absolute Patriots blowout over the Bills, and I'm expecting a relatively close game here this weekend.
Let's very quickly play America's favorite game here.
Love it.
Where do you think that guard Ike Betger went? I don't know this guy's name.
It's Ike Betger. He went to Indiana.
I'm going to say Miami of Ohio. Iowa. We were both pretty close. We were in the right region.
We've been really kind of honing in on these Midwestern schools recently. I
Yeah,
feel.
we really have. The other version of America's favorite game that we did not talk about, but we're going to try to do anyway. Who do you want to test me on the Bills roster about where they went to school? That you do know where they went to school.
Do you know where Tommy Sweeney went?
Tommy Sweeney? No.
Boston College.
Boston College. Yeah. Do you know where Daryl Johnson went?
I do not. I feel like there's been 100 Daryl Johnsons in the
NC
NFL.
State.
NC State.
No, North Carolina A&T. Damn, I lost.
See, we need some punishment for,
all right, yeah.
for this.
Yeah.
All right, I've got to get one more for you then. Do you know where... Do you know where John Feliciano went to school? Guard?
No, I don't.
I do not either.
Do you know where Cody Ford went?
I do. He was Texas A&M?
Oklahoma.
Damn, I knew it was one of those maroon and white
and white
schools.
Teams. All right, well, that will do it for this week's NESN Patriots podcast. Keep it on NESN.com for all of your Patriots coverage. Follow Zach on Twitter at ZachCoxNESN. Follow me on Twitter at Doug Kide, and we will be back next week. I was talking too fast. To recap this game and then preview the Patriots' upcoming game against
the Washington Redskins.